Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello and welcome to episode 110, that's 110, of Mythos Busters. On this beautiful Sunday afternoon, I'm Sean. Joining me today is a severely reduced crew. We've got Ian. Hey, Ian.
Hello, it's me.
So today's podcast is going to be about Lord of the Rings and Mass Effect, and I don't know, what else is in the center of the Venn diagram that we share?
Quite a few things. Yeah, I know this is really the chance to take over now that Nick and Scott aren't here.
I know, because they're so forceful normally. But yeah, so Nick's out on a family event, and Scott is with us in chat, but he's on call right now, continuing to work just crazy hours as an EMT in an overheated Edmonton. So, send him your good vibes and your extra elder signs.
Yep. His corporeal body is spoken for right now.
It's a bit overbooked even.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, we've got a fun show for you guys today. It's going to be a little bit low key. It's going to be a little bit conversational, as you might imagine. So we've got our normal updates. We've got a little bit of more than a little bit of news. There was a really cool stream that we're going to touch on. We're not going to talk about it comprehensively. Go watch it if you haven't. Our main topic today is going to be talking about the Lair of Dagon Mythos pack. And then, of course, we'll finish it up with some tentacle time. But before we get to anything, I want to throw out just a couple quick announcements. First, this is the last chance for Mythos Pride merch. So if you haven't seen it already, we did throw up a special version of our logo for Pride Month. And Pride Month is obviously over, but we're going to keep that open until the end of July. So July 31st, we will close the window, and we're going to send the rest of, all of the proceeds from the sale of our Pride merch to the Trans Lifeline charity. So if you haven't seen it already, please go out and take a look, see if it's anything you like. It's mythosmerch.com. The other thing I wanted to mention as we start rounding into the second half of the year here, we've actually gotten a few questions up already, which is alarming, but also exciting, about Arkham Knights and or Iron Man. So if you're new, welcome. Iron Man is a thing that we do at Arkham Knights. Let's back it up. Arkham Knights, sorry, newbies. I need to talk on the level here. Arkham Knights is a Arkham-specific event that FFG runs in their event center in Roseville, Minnesota. It covers all of their Arkham games, but the LCG crew has just kind of slowly taken over. I mean, we're definitely the majority of the attendance there, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
So a lot of people are interested because it has kind of become the de facto, it's almost like Worlds for a co-op game. So Iron Man is an event that we have traditionally run there, where anyone who dares do so signs up for a team and runs through an entire campaign in one sitting in one day. And on the docket this year is the Dream Eater cycle, which is going to get a little fucked up.
Yeah, it's going to be very complicated.
Yeah, and honestly, those are kind of that is kind of the direction that the questions we've received have gone in, how we're going to organize it. So I just want to come out and say we don't have details yet. We've got our first planning meeting on the books for next week. So when we have details, we will share them. Just know that in general, we are planning to throw Iron Man this year. It's just a matter of getting FFG to announce Arkham Knights, which, if we were able to do that, I don't think we'd have too many more problems left. It's a bit of a thing to get them to announce Arkham Knights.
Yep, that's always the most challenging part of Arkham Knights each year, is giving us more than 2 weeks advance notice.
I mean, in a perfect world, a boy can dream.
Yeah.
So anyway, details on that are forthcoming. Hang tight, and we'll check back in when we have them. All right, so Ian, what Arkham have you been playing in the last little while?
A few things. I finally finished up the last ongoing campaign I had through Innsmouth before I probably start a new round, which was my Finn Can't Touch This deck that I mentioned previously on the podcast. So that did very well through the whole campaign, got the campaign victory, and altogether, that was a fun experience with Finn, and definitely, I think every time I play one of my Evade Gators through Innsmouth, I'm probably going to take a similar approach with cards that basically try to avoid engagement in the first place. And then
just a quick aside, since you're talking about that strategy, do you think that's only like really reliably viable in solo, or do you think that you could get away with that somehow in 2-player?
Yeah, I'm sure you could get away with it in 2-player. I'm just trying to think.
I'm just trying to think because, in 2-player you're drawing ostensibly twice as many enemies.
Sure.
And I'm just curious if it ends up being too much to tax when they get more spread out like that. I ask you because you're the evade expert.
Yeah. It'd be a little bit trickier. I think you might need to build it a little bit differently. And obviously you'd probably have some fighters. Well, if you're getting into like 3 or 4 player, but yeah, I think it's possible.
Okay.
Anyway,
carry on.
And then I started a couple new campaigns not in Innsmouth. So I started Calvin through Return to Carcosa, because I feel like I haven't played Calvin since some of the really crazy Calvin cards came out, like what is it, Spirit of Humanity?
Spirit of Humanity!
Yeah, so I'm like, I need to give that a try. And then Wendy, who I haven't
That's
played...
not just a Calvin card, by the way.
Sure. But it's just ridiculous in Calvin.
It's very good.
And then I haven't played Wendy in forever. Wendy, who for a long time was one of my favorite investigators. Still up there for me, although some more recent ones have kind of taken her spot. But Wendy, my favorite rogue from the core set. So that was another case where I'm like, okay, let me try out Wendy with some of the new stuff. So I started Wendy through Dream Eaters, because I think I'm going to be playing a lot of Dream Eaters campaigns as we start moving towards Arkham Knights to get ready.
Yep. And on the plus side, they're snappy. Like I find that you can kind of pound through a side of Dream Eaters, pretty quickly.
Yeah, I need to play some more 8 scenario interweaving Dream Eaters, because I feel like every time I play Dream Eaters, I'm like, oh, let's just do the 4 scenario version, because it is so fast. You just have to worry about one side. But so I'm taking her through Waking Side, and so far just the first scenario, the hospital scenario. For some reason, the Dream Eater scenarios are the ones I can least remember. Waking Nightmare, I think. And I think, as everyone knows, that can be a pretty tough scenario.
You can get screwed a few different ways with the RNG there.
Yeah, and she was, because usually, like, there's that choke point in that scenario, like the staircase. If you can close that off to stop the infestations from spreading, you're good. Well, even then, it can be a struggle, but at least you can kind of stop the bleeding. But I wasn't able to, and it started spreading, so every location was infested except for 2. And still, I managed to win it with Wendy. The true power of Wendy, yeah. She would, because I was using Moonstone, and she had Randolph Carter, so her willpower was like 6 willpower, so she was just killing all the willpower tests.
Nice.
I had lockpicks.
What's your normal ally in? What's your normal ally in that one?
Let's see, who was I using? I'm trying to remember now. I think I have 2 allies in there, because I'm eventually going to go to Charisma. No, I have Granny Orne and Madame LeBranch as the 2.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh. Wendy and the Golden Girls.
Exactly.
Sorry, I just named your deck. You have to rename it now.
I know. I'm going to click over right now. And I don't think I got Granny Orne out. I got I'm mostly in it for the upgraded version, but I got Yeah, because Granny Orn upgraded boost your intellect, I think. Upgraded
Correct,
level, is
yep.
that true?
Willpower and intellect, and then she becomes mini lucky on a stick.
Right. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that's why I went with Granny Orn is for that intellect boost, because I'm pretty confident with her agility. Like in the past, I always went with Big Man on Campus, but I think I would rather have the intellect boost. Plus, Granny Orn upgraded is just like, yeah. I don't need you to sell you on her.
No, man, running her in TCU Iron Man and Patrice was just such a joy. As someone who really enjoys multiplayer and like always being the guy that like, ooh, I can help.
Yeah,
she's a blast
there's
to
just
blast.
an amazing amount of tests that you fail by one in this game.
That math gets tight way more often than you think.
Yeah, and the bag has a way of knowing when you're just like of pulling out the token that'll make you fail by one. Yeah, so I don't think I'm trying to think. I don't think there's anything too crazy with the deck yet. It's just really trying to push Wendy to her max, and I think with everything that's available now, she's even stronger than before, which is saying a lot. So yeah, I'm looking forward to keep going with that campaign. And there was one card that I was going to mention, but now I can't remember. Elusive. I was just going to give a shout out to actually using Elusive now because of the taboo. Yeah, it came in handy in that scenario a couple times, actually, to just be like, nope, let me just scoot on over to the next location.
Yep.
So especially in that scenario. So
I do appreciate that essentially the first taboo turned elusive into reclusive. It just went and hid in the corner of my card box, and I never found it. But yeah, it might find its way back into decks now. That's pretty good for what it is.
Yep.
Wonderful. For my part, I actually have not played a whole lot of Arkham in the last few days. I've had a family vacation, and then I went to Nick's place in Brainerd, my old hometown, and we've that group of dudes that I hang out with there finally had our first quarterly game weekend post COVID.
Nice.
So I have been a busy beaver. But really, I'm working through 2 Innsmouth campaigns. I've got my Blurst campaign that I talked about last time with Daisy and Agnes. Real fun still. Talk about Spirit of Humanity. That is such a good Agnes card. I'm very, very excited to maybe try out parallel front Agnes with normal back Agnes with Spirit of Humanity. I don't know. There's lots of ways we could go with it, but very, very fun campaign. Just got through Lair of Dagon with that one right before we started this episode. And then I'm also playing an Innsmouth campaign with board member Kyle. He's playing Winnie, and I've got Dexter, Kluver. Nice. Dexter. It's been a really fun campaign. We got absolutely murdered in Too Deep. Winnie has gotten wiped out 4 times, I want to say. She's got 4 physical trauma and a mental.
Ouch.
But we've won most of the scenarios, so they've just gotten so close that Winnie has gone out and been like, all right, well, I'm just going to go take care of this enemy or do the pump room so you can get out. And,
Guess I'll die then.
So, I don't know. 4 trauma going into the last scenario. We've done well resolution-wise, but we'll see if that's going to be too taxing because, I remember taking a lot of damage in the last scenario. I don't know, though. We'll see.
Yeah, I had an Innsmouth campaign with Dexter and Silas where Dexter was Kluver, and at first Dex was kind of struggling a little bit to keep up with the clue pace because I didn't build Silas very clue heavy. But by the end of it, it was basically like Seekers eat your heart out. Like Dex was just gathering clues ridiculous.
When you get that critical mass of the right investigation spells and decent card draw, you can just go. Yeah.
And it wasn't even a particularly great Dexter build leveraging his strengths, but I just had what's her name who can refill a charge when you use it?
Twyla.
Twilight combined with any of the upgraded like investigate cards, it's just like, okay, yeah, I'll just keep gobbling up clues forever. That's okay.
Yeah, she's good. She's one of those cards that's just like so elementally and simply good that I often overlook her. But yeah, very, very good. All right, cool. So let's move in then to the Hotline Weekly Prompt. So we've got a couple of responses. We're playing a little bit of cleanup from past weeks here. I put a prompt out there and then I just bailed on the podcast for 2 episodes, and then I came back and I was unprepared. So playing some cleanup here. Luckily, we only had a couple of responses, but they are meaty and they are good. So let's run through them here.
Hi, Mythos Busters. This is Reaverman on Discord. With regards to Scott's comments on Safina, I feel like I have to agree, and I find it hilarious that there's a friend of mine who up and down is, Safina's so great. Safina's one of the best investigators. And absolutely loves playing Safina. And every single time, I just laugh internally when he gets so angry when he draws Stars of Hades again and again. He'll keep a counter every single time. How many times I drew it. How many dead draws I've had this mission, how many dead draws I had over the whole campaign. And I'm just like, Safina's good, don't get me wrong, but like, maybe this is the balancing factor, and it's just, maybe he'll someday grow to admit that. But on the hill that I'm willing to die on, I know your question was geared towards player cards, but the hill I'm willing to die on is Ancient Evils is overrated. Like, I get it. I 100% grant that it can ruin your mission. Totally grant that. It can advance the agenda at the wrong time. It'll eat actions out of your mission. Great, fine. But 9 out of 10 times, honestly, I'd rather draw Ancient Evils than a lot of other things. 9 out of 10 times, it's put a doom on the agenda and move on with my life. I don't have to spend cards, I don't have to spend resources, I don't have to spend actions, I didn't lose health or sanity. Quite frankly, really nothing happened except for, oh my god, the click economy, we lost some actions. But if you're winning the mission anyway, and you're not planning on dooming out, those actions didn't really hurt you. Not having those actions didn't really ruin your day, and in solo especially, it's like, fine, yeah, I grant. I lost 3 actions, but I didn't lose anything else. My tempo keeps moving forward. In 4-player, fine, I grant you, it's 1 card of 4, and you're losing 12 actions, but I still don't think it's that bad. Like, it's a lot easier to absorb that in a 4-player game. I mean, okay, fine, I like playing Deanna, and I love canceling all these things, but when it comes to, let's say, my Roland player, I'd rather cancel something that's going to deal him sanity damage so that I know that he'll make it to the end of the mission than cancel an Ancient Evil that's going to, put the counter up 1 but otherwise not really hurt our tempo. I know I'm the minority of this, and I have a disagreement every time we draw Ancient Evil. I just kind of shrug and move on with my life. But, I think it's bad. It's definitely bad. It's definitely worse than a lot of things, but I don't think it's the worst thing in the deck by any means. Well, as I said, thanks and take care.
Well, thanks, Chad. So I think, so I don't know if I have a really strong stance on, is Ancient Evils bad or not. I just think that discussing Ancient Evils is a far more nuanced topic than most people want to cop to. And I think he brought it up, and I'm sure I've said this before, but I think that player count is the biggest factor on how bad Ancient Evils is. Because solo, it can almost be a godsend. There are some enemies or treacheries that hops into your threat area, and suddenly you're like, oh, this is going to be my next 2 turns to fucking deal with this thing. But Ancient Evils is just like, well, now you just have 1 fewer turn. It's like a side scroller, and it chops off the end of the map. But if you're going to finish before the end of the map hits anyway, you're fine. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't have a strong stance on Ancient Evils. I just think it's interesting to talk about.
Yeah, And I think I mostly agree with kind of what he said on the voicemail in terms of like lower player counts. When I'm playing solo and Ancient Evils comes up, I'm usually happy. Strangely, I'm just like similar to what he was saying. Like it's okay. I lose 3 actions essentially, losing a turn, 3 actions. But in most cases,
like at least it's not frozen in fear.
Yeah, seriously. And in most cases, since I do tend to play a lot of these investigators where it's like go, get the clues, get out. Like a turn isn't going to be make or break. Compared to like other ways the encounter deck can attack you, like an enemy that's just going to bog you down forever, or Frozen of Fear, of course. Some of these other treacheries that just like stick around in your threat area and keep doing bad stuff to you. Those are worse. To me, Ancient Evils really is at its most painful in like 3 or 4 player, but especially with the dreaded shuffle the encounter discard pile back into the encounter deck. That's when Ancient Evils will when I've heard or experienced when it can end your scenario, because then not only do you have more chances of drawing Ancient Evils because you're just drawing more cards per turn, but if it keeps getting shuffled in with each agenda flip, then you might be drawing, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Ancient Evils in a single scenario, and that might be enough to just knock you out.
I'm actually kind of curious, and maybe this is a better discussion topic for another time, but I know we've talked about this. I've talked about it ad nauseum because that's like my least favorite thing to see. Like if you're not adding new encounter sets to the encounter deck, let the encounter deck sit.
Yeah.
Like make it a consistent experience. I would prefer to like see a variety of encounter cards over the course of a scenario and just kind of feel like, okay, during this scenario I'm going to have to deal with 3 deep ones and 2 willpower, like, and just kind of be able to, roughly math it out like that. But I feel like we always discuss these things from like a statistical probability perspective. We talk about it like it's very, very empirical data, but each of us lives very anecdotally in our actual plays. So I feel like the actual relevant thing is to try to, I don't know, maybe eliminate a little bit of RNG. There are some scenarios where Ancient Evils really does piss me off. I'm looking at you, Dark Side of the Moon.
Oh, yeah. This is one of those things that we share in our Venn diagram is our gripe with this particular mechanic. I think unless there's a very compelling reason, like you need to get more cards that were set aside into the encounter deck, or if it, I don't know, makes some kind of thematic sense. But otherwise, whenever I see that, I just am not happy.
Yeah. Because you're going to see, like, it's going to happen on those scenarios where you're like, all right, I just drew 3 enemies in a row. Somehow I lived through it. I'm probably due for a little bit of a break, and I'm just going to deal with treacheries for a few turns. Shuffle the discard pile into the encounter deck. It's like, well, fine.
Yeah, because I guess a potential rationale for it is that it makes things less predictable. But on the other hand, as card gamers, I think we like a little bit of the predictability because it's part of the strategy. Like, it just plays into the strategy of like, okay, I know I've faced these cards so far, so I kind of know what's left in the encounter deck and not. And that makes things predictable on the one hand, but on the other hand, it feeds into the strategy more. Whereas if you take that away, then it is kind of opening up the door for Mr. RNG to come strolling through.
And I think, God, you're so right. Maybe that's where I've been reaching for, but I haven't quite been able to pull down, is that I feel like it's more fun to be able to strategize and be like, okay, I've already seen 2 of these. There's no more in there. I can commit this and not have to hold it back for willpower and just kind of actually be able to tactically play against the encounter deck because you know it a little bit better.
Yep.
That feels more satisfying to me than just always being on guard for the complete unknown.
Yeah. Yep.
But anyway, okay, so next call is from Big Kahuna, and he's got apparently a spicy take for us.
Hey Busters, Big Kahuna 216 here for the bi-weekly prompt. I have thoughts regarding the most recent Taboo update, as well as the concept of Taboo in general. For this, I think I'm going to have to go with the classic ship sandwich. First, I have to say that I am unhappy with the apparent plan of MJ and Jeremy to utilize the carpet bombing approach when tabooing Seeker, but employing a scalpel when tabooing Survivor. Either unchain the majority of my beloved Seeker cards, or go all scorched earth on the other classes too. Second, I will say that I like one aspect of the recent taboo list, and that is the use of the mutation strategy more so than the chaining strategy. Chaining definitely has the advantage of making the changes easier for the average player, since the impact is limited to deck building. However, chaining crowds out the normal usage of cards by indirectly encouraging people to abuse them to get the value out of them, since they paid extra XP. When playing Taboo, cards like Machete, Mr. Rook, and Knowledge's Power have all but ceased to exist for me, as I find them not to be worth the extra XP, and I'm unwilling to really abuse them to make the increased price of purchasing them to be worth it. Mutation changes the power level of a card rather than the cost, sidestepping the issue. Third, as to the concept of taboo in general, can we not warp the game around the biggest munchkins that can't help themselves from their infinite combos, deck looping, and degenerate card interactions? An official FAQ from FFG is not needed for most of us to not play Brexit an infinite number of times in Yorick. Sleight of Hand Necronomicon, looping my deck every turn, and infinite Brexit simply hold no interest for me. I know that's not a popular opinion, but strong cards can be played in a reasonable fashion. Thanks. One last note. I want to wish good luck to Scott with the increased non-Arkham responsibilities he's currently facing. I hope they get sorted and he's able to return to the podcast soon. Thanks.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's funny that this topic comes up when it's you and me again. You and I specifically have talked about this extensively because of our experience in the Lord of the Rings community. Go ahead and take a drink.
Yep.
Look, I don't want this to come off as judgy or shamey in any way, but yeah, I kind of too am that player that's like, all right, I guess Necronomicon is tabooed, fun, didn't get to play it. Thanks, Munchkins. Thanks, Power Gamers. Thanks, whatever that group of people is who just like see a card and immediately need to break it.
Sauron.
I definitely want the game to be inclusive, and I know that people enjoy the game for different reasons and like to engage with different parts of the mechanics, but my God, can we not make it like a status symbol to be like, I broke this first?
Yeah.
That's all I want.
Yeah, you're definitely right that people play this game for different reasons, and if people really enjoy, and I know there are some people who do really enjoy finding and exploiting weaknesses in the system of a game, and I don't want those people to have their fun taken away, but I think the unhealthy thing that I've sometimes seen in other games is when the kind of importance or weight of those players grows so large that it ends up impacting the game experience for other types of players. And for a healthy game, all types of players need to kind of have equal weight, and that's the important thing. And so the reason why I personally like the taboo approach as it's developed, and it hasn't been perfect, and because it's kind of an evolving thing, and I'm glad that MJ and Jeremy, they've really kind of been open in some of the articles about how they are trying to evolve the approach over time. And experiment with, okay, let's try mutating more versus chaining. So I think what happened with the Seeker cards isn't necessarily like, I mean, I know for a fact it wasn't like a anti-Seeker bias or anything. Like, we hate Seeker, let's destroy those cards. I think it was just...
If anything, I think it's demonstration that Seeker is like MJ's favorite class, and they maybe come out a little bit too hard because of it.
Right. And I think it was just like, because chaining at first is the easiest approach. And I think, while personally I like mutations more, like the mutations require a little bit more headspace of you have to remember what's the new card text on these cards versus having to remember just, okay, it has this much more XP. So although I would like them to just be like, okay, let's do mutate everything and hardly ever use chaining, I realize there's kind of extra brain space that takes up. But anyway, overall, I like the taboo approach in this game because it's optional. So people don't have to use...
Let's talk about that for a quick second.
Sure.
Let's talk about the idea of it being optional, because I think that's kind of fascinating. Because if you're here, chances are you're really into the community aspect, the social aspect of the game. And I feel like that complicates the idea of it being optional a little bit. If the majority of the network that you're connected to has bought into it, and you want to participate in that conversation. I think, like you said, I think they've done the best they can with it, making it optional. But I do think that if you're connected to the community, there is a little bit of draw and pressure to do as the Romans do, you know?
Yeah, it's almost like it's optional depending on where you stand. Like, we live in kind of an echo chamber of the most hardcore players, because that's who's going to go to the Discord and probably listen to our podcast. Although I think we have a little bit broader base. But compared to, there's a lot of... You could probably find a lot of random Arkham players and be like, oh, do you play Taboo? And they'll be like, what? What's Taboo? Like, not even heard of it before. But because we live in this world of kind of the most intense Arkham players, I think for a large part, many of them, it's not really optional.
Yeah. And I guess I bring it up because it is optional. Like, objectively, it is. I can choose not to play it. For some reason, and maybe the Necronomicon is just the most extreme example of this, but for some reason... I've never played that non-taboo because in my head, everyone around me is playing taboo. I generally like what the taboo list is trying to do, so I generally kind of trust the design sensibility behind the decisions that created the taboo list. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing.
Yeah,
I don't know if I actually have a point. I just wanted to bring that up.
No, I know it's a discussion that often comes up. But overall, I just, even if we can debate whether it's truly optional for certain groups, like, I just appreciate that it is kind of presented as something optional, compared to most other games. It's like, okay, here's the errata, here's the change, like, live with it. This is what it is. And it's changed for everyone, and it's not optional. I mean, of course you can ignore it. It's a card game. The Arkham Police will not knock down your door. But still, for many of us players, it's like if it's presented as this is what it is and it's said that it's not optional, we're just going to feel obligated to follow it. But I much prefer this approach to what can also happen in other games where then the scenario design starts getting amped up to compensate. Like, okay, there's some very powerful cards in this game. All of a sudden, every shroud's going to be 5 or 6, and we're going to up the stats of enemies to compensate, and we're going to have worse treacheries with higher skill tests, and that's how you compensate.
I feel like we took a step in that direction with Innsmouth anyway. Like, I feel like Innsmouth comes out swinging with the high shrouds. It's like, all right, not everyone's playing Secret. Calm down.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't crunched the numbers. I'm sure later cycles have probably ramped things up a little bit, but definitely not at the level as I've seen in other games where it just...
Yeah.
Where we get in that death cycle where the kind of... the players who seek to break things start pushing broken cards, and then the scenario designers start pushing kind of overpowered scenarios in response. And then players who like a different style of play are just left out in the cold. So even if Taboo is not always perfect, if that's avoiding that situation, which I think it has, I'd much rather have that.
Yeah. I mean, there's no perfect solution. So
yeah.
I mean, I think this is a good one. Despite my complaints, I'm very happy with the way this goes.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, thanks to Chad and Chris for calling in. Appreciate your guys' input. So for next week, obviously, if anyone still has thoughts on Taboo, overpowered cards, anything that we've talked about, if you're behind and want to call in and chime in now, please feel free to do so. But for next week, let's get speculative. So, the prompt for the voicemail for next episode is based on what you know, or I guess what you don't know, about Edge of the Earth. what mechanics or card space do you think it will explore, or do you want it to explore? Are there any corners of the player card pool that you want to see expanded? Like, my answer is small hand Survivor. I'd love the idea of like things like Last Chance and Madame Lebranche's draw ability actually seeing some fleshing out. But if there's anything that you either think it will explore or want it to explore, call in and let us know about it. That's 203-493-6984 or 203-493-MYTH. And I suppose this is going to be ongoing. We got an email from a listener, Nick, thanks Nick, who offered a suggestion for a discussion topic for a future episode. He specifically wanted to hear our thoughts on our favorite custom, like community created content, which I would be really excited to talk about. I'm going to have to play some community content first. I feel like the way that the release schedule has been up to this point, we've just been drowned in the normal official product so much that we don't really have the time to properly devote to the custom content beyond our own. But yeah, so if you have thoughts, this is leading me to my point for the hotline. We're about to enter a new era of Mythos Busters. We're about to wrap up the last cycle that's released with the old release model. Chances are we're going to have some big breaks between releases at this point, so it's going to leave us a lot of space to kind of I guess spread our conversational wings, actually do a little bit of like theory topics, a little more some stupid games. We can bring back like Big Tentacles Exploding or whatever we called that. Wordicon is what we called it.
Yeah.
We can bring back some of our games. We can do some kind of wacky fun stuff with the game. So if anyone has any thoughts or ideas, things you want us to touch on or discuss, we'd love to hear from you. You can call that into the hotline, or if you just want to shoot us an email or a Facebook message, that's fine too. That's mythosbusterspod@gmail.com. Ian, what patron news have we?
So first off, thanks to our board members. That's Chris B, Chris H, and Chris M, our conglomeration of Chris's. Morton, Jared, Ian, Kyle, Philip, Dave, Abilio, Jesse, Chad, and Robert. Thanks so much for your huge support of the podcast. Special shout out to a random patron this time around goes to Hank Lawler. Thanks, Hank, for your support as well.
And also, it occurs to me that the Arkham Cards app got a big bump on Reddit recently, and as a result, so did Dissonant Voices. So, if you're new to the podcast and if you've entered our pipeline through that window, welcome. I hope you find the seats comfortable.
Yep. Good shout. Mythosmerch.com, we mentioned at the top in regards to our Pride merch, but make sure you go there and check out our various other merch. And if you use any of our merch out there in the wild, feel free to send us pictures or share pictures with us because we'd love to see that. I did hear, I think someone mentioned in Discord the other day that someone actually recognized a piece of their Mythos merch out in the wild, which blows my mind.
That warms my heart.
Yes.
That makes me feel good in my tummy.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I did want to mention we didn't necessarily unlock any goals with this threshold, but it's kind of momentous. We actually cracked the 4-digit mark, the $1,000 line per episode, which is,
wow.
Speaking of blowing my mind, yeah.
I mean, I have been staggered so many times by how consistent and continuing the support has been that I don't know that I have any surprise left. I just live in a state of shock.
This is accurate. Yeah, I just really no words for how much people have supported us, and I'm just very grateful. And we do have, speaking of people who support us, we have a few new members of the Mythos Busters office this time around. We got a couple job titles to give out, fresh, hot off the press from HR. First off, David Shope is going to be taking on the role of Expedition Partner Life Coach. Very important when you're taking expeditions way down south.
Yeah.
Did you want to read Kevin's, Sean?
Oh yeah, sure. And then this is very important. I'm very surprised we haven't filled this position yet.
Yeah.
Kevin Evans is going to be our action window washer.
Super
Gotta
important.
keep those windows clean. Especially the Zappy Boy windows. They're very, very small.
Yeah, and they're hard to pin down enough to wash them. So, finally, Charles Lasky is. This is a new role that we didn't have need for before, but now it's going to be very important. Charles is going to be taking on the role of personal whip waxer to Monterey Jack. We got a special request.
Giggity.
Yep, that whip needs a waxing at all times. So. Thank you to all our new members of the office.
And welcome. Perfect. So then let's move on to the news. I realize that Nick's gone and you and I didn't discuss who's going to be covering this.
Sure, I can.
So I'm going to trust you because I think you're more informed than I am. I have been more disconnected from the community in the past month than I've been in a while. So
yeah, I know what you mean. It's been a busy summer. This is like the busiest time of the year for my particular line of work. So, but anyway, so the news is really that there was a recent stream featuring MJ and Jeremy talking about Edge of the Earth cards. And there were quite a few cards revealed on stream. In fact, there were so many cards revealed on stream that we're going to save some of them for next time. We'll talk about a few now, and we'll talk about the rest next time around. And then
we got to very deliberately space this shit out now.
Yeah.
Now that everything's getting dumped at once.
That's probably going to be a lot of our approach just for the rest of the life of this podcast, since there's going to be these big dumps of cards where we don't cover everything at once. We kind of do a little bit now and save the rest for later. Okay, but I
mean, unless you guys really want us to, but that's how you get 5-hour episodes.
Yeah,
so.
Do you really want 5-hour episodes?
I mean, you think you do, but you don't.
Yeah. At that point, you might as well just break it into separate episodes anyway. So. But what we will talk about is because two of the Edge of the Earth investigators.
Edge of the Earth.
There we go. Edge of the Earth. Okay, that's now the name of the cycle and probably the name of the episode.
Edge of Earth.
Okay, so the two Edge of Earth investigators who were revealed, we will talk about those ones now because, of course, we're going to talk about those first. So first off, since I've been talking quite a bit, why don't you go ahead and read Bob Jenkins, Sean?
Bob Jenkins is our new survivor investigator. He's the salesman. He has 2 willpower, 4 intellect, 3 combat, and 3 agility. Entrepreneur traded. Ooh, and a wall of text. Here we go. At any time, an investigator at your location may reveal to you the item assets in their hand. You may take an additional action during your turn, which can only be used to play an item asset from the hand of an investigator at your location under their control. Both investigators may spend resources to pay its cost. His Elder Sign effect is +1 for each item asset you control, and he has 6 health and 8 sanity. So as like Mr. Multiplayer, I love playing support. I love this. This is cool.
Yeah, it took me a second to grok this and figure out what was going on because it is a wall of text. Because at first, the way I read it, it was like you could only use that action to play an item asset from another investigator. But you can also just use it to play an item asset from your hand.
You're an investigator at your location.
Yep. So even if you're playing solo, because at first I was like, oh, this is like all multiplayer. But then you could play Bob solo and you just have an extra action each turn to play an item out. But obviously I think he reaches his final form in multiplayer.
In 4-player probably. Because even in 2-player, you're not going to get to use this every turn.
Sure. Yeah. But it does... I think the thing I like the most about this is because there's a lot of... And I kind of would need to look at the card pool. Speaking of which, he's Survivor 0 and Rogue 1 to 5. So he's one of those kind of morphing investigators where he starts out Survivor and turns Rogue.
super normie investigators, which is actually a little bit of a shame because Survivor actually has some really good leveled up items that would work pretty well with this, like shovel and lantern and that sort of thing.
Yeah. But yeah, I think kind of along the lines of the shovel and lantern, that there's a lot of item assets in the game that I like, but the action cost to play them, especially in solo, is just, I can't find the time to play this. But I think he opens up those cards a little bit more. Like sometimes you want to play a soak, but can you spend an action to play a soak? Or those cards where you have to discard them to get an effect like the shovel. All of a sudden with Bob, you get that extra action to play and it's not as bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that, on its face, if you're building like a normal investigator, this looks pretty like middling. Mm-hmm. But I feel like this is maybe one of the first spaces where if someone's bringing Bob to the table, it's going to behoove your team to really coordinate your decks, plan those items,
mm-hmm.
And kind of actually play with it a bit.
Yeah, and also the fact that he can help spend resources to pay for it is easy to overlook, but with that upgraded rogue access, I think he'll be able to pile on some money. And so, yeah, in 4-player, he could potentially be using that money to help pay other people and using his action. So basically, he can soak up the action cost and the actual cost. And so in 4-player, you might be able to get everyone's kits going way faster than you would normally. Yeah, it appeals to me. I might want to take him on for a future Iron Man.
And am I correct in saying that this is remarkable in that he is the first survivor to have a printed intellect above 3?
Am I
forgetting someone?
Accurate. Wendy's 3. Stella's 2,
3.
I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Stella is 2.
Yeah, I think that's the case.
Yeah, so I love the idea of Bob being like an off clover and then spends the rest of his time just making sure everyone's set up.
Yeah,
that tickles me.
Especially in multiplayer. Okay, I'll read through Shrewd Dealings, which is his signature asset. So this helps sweeten the pot a little bit too. So this is a 2-cost signature asset, 2 intellect icons, a wild icon. Bob Jenkins deck only. Reduce the cost of each item asset you play by 1. And reaction, when you play an item asset, play it under the control of any investigator at your location. So there you go. The cost of the assets is by 1, and that's just the passive, so it's always taking effect.
And you can just give them to other people.
Yeah.
Although Debbie points in chat here that I will point out, investigators cannot control other investigators' signature assets.
Mm-hmm.
So this will never work on like doing anything munchkin-y with. I'm not even gonna. I was gonna think of like a good example, but I don't even want to stretch my thought in that.
Gatebox or something.
You can't do it.
Gatebox an item?
Oh my god! You did it! You did it! You evil genius.
Yeah. I think it has to be that way. You can't allow signatures to be passed around. It would just. I think it would tear a hole in the space-time continuum. Yeah, so this is one of those signature assets where it just plays directly with what you want Bob to do. So seems good. Do you want to read his weakness? Greed.
Part of me wants to be just blindsided by it the first time I play, but no, we'll read it. Greed is his signature treachery. It is flaw, traded, and revelation. Take 1 horror. If you have 10 or fewer resources, take an additional horror. 5 or fewer resources, take 1 additional horror. Or 0 resources, take 1 additional horror. So if you're recklessly spending down, or you manage to lose resources to a treachery or something, this is dealing you a 4 spot of horror.
Yeah, a 4 spot. Probably going to be using one of my additional actions as Bob to play a cherished keepsake out, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely not nothing for if you play this recklessly, I could definitely see it taking you out. I'm glad it's not direct horror.
Yes.
From
a rules perspective.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, from a rules perspective, do you take all of the horror at once? You just calculate how much you do, or are these single pings of horror? So I'm just trying to think about like damage and horror cancel, like Devil's Luck or Perseverance or something like that. Of course, he can't take Devil's Luck, can he? What's the rogue one?
I think because it says additional horror that it counts as like all one big lump.
Okay,
but I'm not sure offhand though.
Missing Scott.
Yeah.
Missing Scott right now.
Yeah, thankfully Survivor, even if he has level 0 Survivor access only, there's quite a few soaks in there he can take advantage of, so...
Okay.
I think it'll be fine. We'll find out.
I mean, I feel like this isn't as bad as Harvey's. Because at least you can kind of keep this in mind and try to ride at 5 resources. Because, if this hits you for 2, he's got 6 sanity or 8 sanity, you're probably going to be pretty okay.
Yeah.
But like with Harvey, it's like, how do I play without a big hand? Because that's what I do. I'm big hand. I'm Harvey. I guess I don't get to play until I see my weakness.
Yeah. And the fact that it's hitting his stat sanity rather than health that he's stronger at is... Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure how much this will affect your play, because obviously as Bob you want to keep spending resources. I don't know that I would be trying to hoard resources until this shows up. I think you just focus on soaks is the way to deal with it.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about an investigator who has been talked about for a long time now, especially because he was specifically called out in the Forgotten Age,
TFA,
right?
Yep.
As if Monterey Jack is your lead investigator, blah, blah, blah. And everyone knew he was coming eventually, but it's been a bit of a wait. I will go ahead and read him out because he's green, and he speaks to me already. Monterey Jack is the archaeologist. 1 will, there we go, starting off strong. 4 intellect, 2 combat, 5 agility, wayfarer trait, reaction. At the end of your turn, if you started this round 1 location away from your current location, either gain 1 resources or draw 1 card. If you started this round 2 or more locations away, do both instead. Elder Sign effect +1. If you started this round 1 or more locations away from your current location, gain 1 resource or draw 1 card. 8 health, 6 sanity, and again, he's another morpher investigator, is what I'm calling them so far. He starts off Rogue 0, and he eventually gets to Seeker cards level 1 through 5.
So it's a little bit like Ursula, Rita, and Finn got thrown in a blender.
And got turned into a smoothie.
A cheese smoothie.
And then poured into a person mold that became Monterey Jack.
Alright, this metaphor's terrible. That is a stat spread, though. Holy shit. Like, no fluff at all.
No.
It's like, alright.
Yep.
You know what you're doing with Jack.
Yeah. 4 intellect, 5 agility. I mean... Everyone knows I love the kind of high intellect, high agility combo in Rogue. But in this case, he's really prizing movement, obviously, so that if you moved at least once away from your current location, you get a resource or draw a card. And again, the resources and cards are just kind of the basis of the game, so...
So Nimble is his signature card, really.
Mm-hmm.
Is what I hear there.
Yep. Pathfinder, obviously, will just be huge.
Look, I know everyone's really down on this card, and it might take a little bit of cajoling to get people to include it again, but he's pretty okay with Shortcut as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like people don't like Shortcut anymore.
Certain people who we won't name. Yeah, Shortcut for sure. Pathfinder, Nimble. Are there any big ones we're forgetting? I feel like those.
I have actually really been enjoying. It's the 1 cost. Uncovers secrets. The secrets. The Truth Beckons. There it is. The Truth Beckons. Depending on your map, I've been getting solid use out of that card.
Yeah, because that one...
Especially in scenarios where you do a lot of backtracking.
That one will move you multiple locations, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Basically until you hit an unrevealed or an enemy, so...
Yeah, I think this guy is going to be super strong. I mean, it just has all the tools, the stat line, the ability, the fact you can gain a resource or draw a card. I like having that choice of getting whatever you need.
Okay, so we need to come up with a name for that thing that we do, and it used to be Norman, but now it's going to be with everyone. Where you see an investigator, you're planning out a deck, and you accidentally, like in your mind, include leveled up cards for their main class, and kind of forget that they can't take them. How about the Morpher Fake Out? We can workshop.
Yeah,
we can workshop it. It's
stick and move.
I can do better. Give me another take.
I know. I was already thinking in my head, like, oh, Cat Burglar would be good for that. Oh, wait.
Nope.
Yeah, I definitely anticipate he'll probably end up being one of the strongest investigators. I wouldn't be surprised. We wouldn't be complete talking about Monterey Jack if we didn't talk about his whip, which needs waxing. Sean, did you want to read Trusty Bullwhip?
Bullwhip. Trusty Bullwhip is obviously Monterey Jack's signature asset. It is 2 cost. It has 2 agility icons and a wild icon. It is item, weapon, and melee traded. Fast. Monterey Jack deck only. Action fight. This attack uses agility instead of combat. If this attack succeeds, you may exhaust Trusty Bullwhip to either automatically evade the attacked enemy or deal +1 damage for this attack. And it takes up a hand slot. Wow.
I like that.
I mean, I love me some Sword Cane. Mm-hmm. And this is Rogue Sword Cane, except it's also fast.
Yeah, it is fast, isn't it? It's fast.
I may have mentioned it's fast.
Yeah, using 5 agility to fight, and then having that choice of extra damage around him. It's really good. I do like the signature assets that are item traded too, so that you can, I don't know, throw in an upgraded backpack or something and try to grab it quicker.
Or, just generally enhancing Carl. Not Carl. The hell's his name? He's new to me. Sorry, Bob. It's Bob. Enhancing Bob's power just straight out of the box.
Sure, yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me to know that this is going to be very item heavy in its signatures. Mm-hmm. At least what we've seen so far confirms that.
Yeah, that's true. Huh. Yeah, I think this is just a solid, trusty weapon that you can count on for sure. Oh, yeah, I'm excited for Monterey Jack. All right, and as we said, there were quite a few other cards spoiled that we'll talk about next time. There's some tasty stuff in there, but we'll save those when Nick is back.
Sounds good. All right, well, let's bust on in then to our main topic. So we're skipping rules. Scott's gone, obviously. So let's hop into the player card reviews for the Lair of Dagon player cards. Ian, enchant us with this first card, would you?
Okay. First one is Enchant Weapon. This is a level 3 Guardian card. It costs 3, has 2 will icons and a combat icon. Attached to a weapon asset controlled by an investigator at your location. Limit 1 per asset. Attached asset gain.
Look at that. Okay, quick pause. I love that the game is expanding into more like, hey, include cards for your teammates type space.
Yeah.
It's been very, very careful about it up to this point. And I just want to see more and more of it.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen a couple of like what do we want to call it? Like upgrades to, I guess it's an upgrade. It's in the trait. Upgrades to weapons, but being able to do that to someone else's weapon. Attached asset gains the relic trait and takes up an arcane slot in addition to its other slots. Reaction: when you perform a fight action using attached asset, exhaust this card. Add the owner of this card's willpower to your combat for this attack. This attack deals +1 damage. Yeah, that's an interesting piece to add the owner of this card's willpower to your combat.
Mm-hmm. So the person who cast it. It breaks my heart that Diana cannot play this, because this would be this would be an auto include in any of my multiplayer Diana decks. Just throw this on there and just add 6 to a test. As it is, what do you think?
I like this one a lot. Obviously, it's a little bit on kind of the mid to pricey side, like 3 XP and 3 cost are both significant.
Not fast.
But the fact you're getting a repeatable +1 damage, and if you're using this, it's probably going to be with one of your high willpower takers. That's going to be a pretty significant boost. So I think it's a question of how much is that worth to you, an extra damage each turn and an extra, like +3, +4 will for one test, essentially.
Yeah. So obviously Mary takes this because she's got the solid will. Zoe, yeah. Who else? Maybe Leo? I suppose there are... Guardians do have decent willpower as it goes. Yeah, I'm not taking 2, but this is a decent little include if you've got some way, if you just want to like boost your killer up to ridiculous levels.
Yeah, I think the criticism that people might level at this is like, or a reason why they wouldn't take it is if you're going to spend the XP and cost, like why not just take one of the big weapons that pump out more damage and you don't have to exhaust. But
porque no los dos.
Yeah, exactly.
Throw this on your Time-Worn brand and just go to town, baby.
Yeah, I definitely want to build a Zoe Time-Worn brand with this, because Zoe Time-Worn brand is already one of my favorite builds, so adding this on top. But yeah, I think also the multiplayer piece, which we touched on, is an important part of this.
All right, I'll move us on then to Nephthys, Huntress of Bast, who is our... Oh boy, no image for this one. All right, so she is a 3-cost, level 4 Guardian ally. Asset. See, this is just thrown off. I'm used to looking at actual cards. Has the ally and blessed traits. Has 2 health and 2 sanity. Has a willpower and 2 combat icons. You get +1 willpower. Reaction: when 1 or more blessed tokens would be removed from the chaos bag during a skill test, seal them on Nephthys instead. And then free trigger. Exhaust Nephthys. Either release 3 blessed tokens sealed on her, or return 3 blessed tokens sealed on her to the token pool to deal 2 damage to an enemy at your location. Yeah, that's pretty okay.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, if you're playing blessed play anyway, let's say your sister Mary, I mean, it'd be hard to argue not to take this when you get a +1 will boost, which you want. And I think the thing is, it's not really asking anything of you. Like, it's just kind of gathering the blessed tokens as they come out, and then you get to release them to the wild to deal 2 damage.
And it's not like the reaction is grabbing blessed tokens from your tests or from tests at your location. It is just like the Covenant, right? Mm-hmm. The Guardian Covenant works anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
I do like how that works in Harmony, especially like if you're married and you're just passively pumping them into the bag to begin with. Like, Other than Mary, do you see anyone looking at this very hard? Because we're into 4 XP here, so basically only actual honest to goodness Guardians can take this.
Yep. And if you want 2 copies, you're talking about 8 XP. That's not nothing.
And if you're looking at honest to goodness Guardians, how many of them really want their ally to be giving them a willpower boost versus, combat or whatever else? I don't know. I think passive damage is good.
Yeah, I think it's mostly a Mary card. Maybe if you are a Guardian and you're not Mary, but you're playing in a group that's playing like 3 or 4 player group with a lot of blessed tokens, you might want to do that. I have been meaning to build, like, since Bless was announced, I've been wanting to build a Zoe Bless build, and this is in my plan.
Well, how could you not?
This is in my plans as one of the upgrades for sure.
Okay. I dig it. All right. I think then we're moving into green cards. Yes. No, we're into yellow cards.
Yellow cards. Yep.
don't you stitch it to us?
The Stygian Eye is a level 3 Seeker event, cost of 10, has 3 will icons, insight, and curse traits. Fast, play only during your turn. Reduce the cost to play the Stygian Eye by 1 for each curse token in the Chaos bag. Until the end of the round, you get +3 to each of your skills. Okay, let me think about this a little bit.
Yeah, so... Alright, so take away the cost for a quick second. Fast event that costs... Okay, so fast event that gives you +3 to all of your skills for a round.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you were just going to pay an honest resource cost for that effect, what would that resource cost be? Taking away all like the curse stuff. 4, 5, somewhere around there?
Probably. I'm thinking about similar cards. Like there's the Survivor one that starts you with a base 5 in a skill. What's the cost on that? I'm trying to remember. Is that a 3-coster?
Oh, Trial by Fire.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a 3.
So yeah, somewhere around a 3 or 4 maybe.
It's like, I'm just trying to figure out like what is the use of just like a supercharged skills card for a single turn, because normally, and maybe this is just the way I play, you can tell me if your play is differently. Normally, I'm kind of doing like 1 or 2 things during a single turn. So it's almost more of a benefit to have a single focused boost to the thing I'm going to do. Now this is nice because no matter what you're going to do, this helps you. Mm-hmm. But is +3 enough of a carrot to play an event for that purpose?
Yeah.
+3 is okay.
That's a tough one. Yeah, I kind of agree with you that in most cases, like, your turns are kind of focused, like, okay, I just need to get clues, so you're doing, like, some intellect tests, maybe moving, or you're just fighting. It's really maybe only in solo where you get a lot of those turns, like, okay, I need to evade this enemy, and then investigate, and then move, I guess. So really you're doing 2 tests. Or I need to fight a couple times and then investigate.
So I could see myself looking at this and including it in a deck and thinking like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have a bomb turn, and then I sit there during the game and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna wait for my bomb turn. The moment's coming, it's coming, guys, and then it sits in my hand the rest of the game. Maybe I'll commit it to an emergency willpower test. Like I don't know. And I have a hard time with this card being worth all that it asks.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, if you have enough curse tokens in the bag to play it, so let's say there's like 7 or 8 curse tokens, probably have a decent chance of drawing curse tokens, which means your +3 suddenly gets reduced by 2. I mean, granted, if you're doing curse play, you're probably playing some covenants or something else to counter that, so it's not as simple as that, but just something to think about. I don't know. I'm not sure how much I love this one, honestly.
I feel like the effect is cool and I like what it's doing, but the like base cost of it is a little too high for me. If this started at like a 7 or 8 and then got reduced by curses, cool. If this was a level 2 card and we could start looking at, okay, off-class seekers can look at this, like that becomes a different card too. But bumping it up into level 3 and starting it at 10 cost, I don't know. It's just it's on a higher shelf than I care to reach to.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay. So then we have Hyper Awareness level 4, which is going to be exactly like all the updated talents that we got from the core set. So it's Seeker, obviously, 2 cost, uses 2 resources, replenish these resources at the start of the round, and then free action, spend a resource from your resource pool or from Hyper Awareness. You get +1 intellect or +1 agility for this skill test. So, I've really enjoyed the Mystic version of this. Is it just Arcane Studies? Arcane Research?
I think so.
Y'all know what I'm talking about. I've enjoyed it. The recurring credits, pulling that over from Netrunner, has been pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
What's your experience been?
I love them in theory, but just haven't used them yet. Just finding the XP to purchase them has been the biggest barrier, I think. They're definitely strong. It's just, if you look at this, it's XP4. So again, if you want the 2 copies, you're talking about 8 XP. Which I think they do provide a good amount of value for that. But it's just finding the spot in your XP progression to grab them can be tricky sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like I don't take these unless I care about both stats that they're giving.
Oh yeah, for sure.
If I just need an intellect boost, there's probably a more efficient way to get it. But I might look at this in like an Ursula.
Mm-hmm.
Or a Monterey, a Jack.
Yeah, definitely would be good for both of those. Yeah, I think you're really looking, probably honestly, maybe solo or 2-player where you're a seeker who knows you're going to do a fair bit of evading too.
Now we're moving into green cards.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you get to pronounce this one because I don't know how.
I have no idea, so someone in chat can pronounce it correctly for me, hopefully. My closest guess is Gaius? Geis? We'll go with Gaius. This is a rogue level 2 asset. It's pack traded, cost 2, it's exceptional. You get +1 will, +1 intellect, +1 combat, +1 agility. Forced, after Gaius enters play, make a promise using the following formula. I shall not draw, play, commit any cards during each of my turns. If you break this promise while Gaius is in play, discard it and add 10 curse tokens to the chaos bag. First off, I have to say I love how this card is templated. That you have to make a promise using the formula.
Yep.
That is just I assume this was MJ's design
take an oath.
because it's just it is. It
so smells
funny.
Strongly of MJ.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
And if in fact it was Jeremy, I apologize.
Yeah.
It's a good smell.
Either way, whoever designed that's just, I love it so much.
And I did look up a quick YouTube video. It's a Gaelic word, so it's apparently it's gayish.
Gayish, okay.
Or gayish, I guess is if you prefer.
Okay.
Have you played it yet?
No, I've had it in a few decks and just haven't gotten it drawn. Again, that's the kind of exceptional curse where a lot of these rogue exceptional cards are so cool and then you just can't draw them. They always end up on the bottom of your deck. So I am hoping to get it flowing and going soon. I do have a very crazy Lola build, which I was going to try out on our recent stream, and I just went with Trish instead. Which has like this and Dark Horse and Crystalline Elder Sign.
Okay.
It's just
I was just gonna mention how cool it is that every class is kind of getting this flavor of, okay, you get +1 to everything, and every class pays for it very differently.
Mm-hmm.
And Lola can take them all, so there you go.
Yeah, I have no
Lola build.
I have no idea how well it'll work. I do want to try it out soon, and maybe I will run it on a stream whenever our next stream is. But yeah, this is just a perfect card to me because I don't think it's overpowered. It's structured exactly how it needs to be. Obviously, getting a passive boost to every stat is super strong, so it needs to be counterbalanced. The cost and XP are both reasonable. Even with it being exceptional and paying 4, you still only need to get 1 copy. But yeah, the promise is the tricky part. So this is the one I always go back and forth on in my head, and obviously it's deck dependent. But which do you think is kind of the best promise to make?
So hip shot. I'm gonna say draw. Because unless you're doing something during your, if you've got a bunch of draw in your deck, then maybe that's a non-bow. Or if you're doing like a very, very light skills build, maybe commit. But like, I don't know. Even in light skills decks, I tend to commit normal cards. So my answer is draw. But obviously that comes with a lot of qualifiers.
Yeah, I think it has to be draw or commit, because not being able to play any cards. Like at first, there's always these. It's almost like Monkey's Paw, where there's all these. Like at first, you think, "Oh, this is simple," because at first I was thinking assets. Like I just get all my assets out, and then I'm good to go. But no, playing events would count. And so suddenly, you just like not being able to play cards in a card game doesn't seem that great.
I mean, if you've got a tight kit, like the one place I can see that working is if you've got a very, very tight kit. You only need like 3 or 4 assets out and you're up and running and everything else is skills and events. Then I can totally see that working.
Yeah.
But yeah, for your average investigator, like not being able to play things like, okay, well, how do I beat the game now?
Yeah, and I have run investigators where I don't commit much. Like I get their stats up high enough. But still, there are usually cases where you just kind of need to throw little icons in there. So yeah, I think I agree with you in draw. It is tricky though, because like even things, say it's like perception or manual dex, which draws you a card if you're successful, like that would count as drawing a card and break the promise. So you just would have to be a little bit careful on that.
On the plus side, if you are teaming up with Seeker, who somehow has not managed to translate the grimoire by the time you have Gauge, very, very easy to fill the bag for them.
Yep, very, very easy. Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing with this one.
Yeah, and totally digging the art. Very, very cool card. Oh, I get the boring ones.
Aww.
So next one is leveled up Hard Knocks. So it's just like all of our other talents. It's level 4, 2 cost, combat and agility, 2 icons apiece. Uses 2 resources. Replenish them at the end of the round. Free action, spend a resource from resource pool or from Hard Knocks. You get +1 combat or +1 agility for this skill test. If you like those stats and can take this card, probably you do. I mean, everything we said about all of the other ones applies here. Do you think that there is one of those basic core set talent assets that gets used least? Like, do you think there's one that's kind of obviously on the bottom of the heap?
It might be either this one or what stats does the Survivor one do again?
Dig deep is willpower and agility. Just pure defense.
It might be this one, honestly. I'm not sure.
Yeah. That's about where I'm at.
Because again, it goes back to the thing we said of you really want to leverage both of these. And generally, these are both kind of enemy management stats of like, I'm either going to evade or combat. So this would really be for an investigator who's doing both, who can kind of manage enemies either through evading or fighting, which I have run that a few times with like skids. But it's just not as kind of in demand as some of the other stat combos, I think.
Yeah, I think we need more things that give you a damage boost for evading first to make it more effective for actual killing. All right, moving on then. Oh. Can I steal this one?
Yeah,
I want to steal this one.
Go for it. You got 2 boring ones in a row. So.
Close to my heart is Ikiak, the Council's Chosen. So we finally see Ikiak from the 2018 Arkham Knights Council. Am I remembering that correctly?
I think
2018
so.
or 2019.
Time is kind of fuzzy now.
Yeah, it's been a while. We lost a year somewhere in there. But anyway, so she is a 3 cost is truth. Level 3 mystic asset, ally and sorcerer traits. Has a willpower and intellect icon. You get +1 willpower and +1 intellect. You get -1 willpower and -1 intellect for each weakness beneath Ikiak. In reaction, when an investigator at your location draws a basic weakness, exhaust Ikiak, cancel that weakness's effect, place it face down beneath Ikiak. Its owner must draw it if Ikiak leaves play. So, this is, okay, so really solid little ally, 3 cost, 2 good boosts, 2 health, 2 sanity, got decent soak. You can, I mean, I don't know, I feel like this one is almost like deck specific. Do you know offhand, rules-wise, when you are supposed to add the basic weakness to your deck? Is it when you are deck building? Is it at the end? Is it at the beginning? Because I feel like you take this if you like, if you draw Amnesia.
Yeah, I don't remember offhand. I think it's after you build a deck, and that's usually how I build. I mean, since this one is an upgrade, you can always just upgrade into it afterwards once you see.
That's a very nice way of saying that's a dumb question.
I think it does come up in other circumstances, but I've yet to I've had access to her all this time since Arkham Knights, and I haven't used her, but it's mostly because whenever we get those special like council cards, I always forget to use them because they're not on Arkham DB. So
yep, that's a problem.
Yep.
I used the original version a bit. I haven't had a chance to use the new one. It didn't get changed a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
They added skill icons because the original one did not have any skill icons, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
Took it down in health and took it down by 1 in health, and then I think the original version was a level 2 card, so like it could be cross class. So it's a little sad that we lose cross class. I guess Lola can still take her. But I'd say overall pretty good. It's a cheap little ally for those good boosts. And then if you've got a situation where that basic weakness would really cause a kerfuffle, then you can just be like, nah, just not going to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
The downside is that if you then cancel that card and then put Ikiak under Diana, you have to draw the card anyway.
That might be some problems, yeah.
And it's unfortunately counterproductive.
Yeah, it almost...
I like her, though.
Is this an ally where you don't really... Because oftentimes when we plan out decks, we already kind of have in our head like an upgrade path of what we want.
Mm-hmm.
But is this more of a reactive choice that like after the campaign's been going and you know what your teammates have as a basic weakness and you're like, okay, your partner has a Doomed or something, I better pull in Ikiak. Is this more of like a reactive choice?
I honestly think it probably is. I mean, you can just opt into this and just decide like, hey, I'm just never going to deal with my basic weakness and I'll enjoy the stat boosts while I have it.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely feel like this is that campaign where it's like, oh, well, Patrice drew Overzealous? That's terrible. Let's not have that happen.
Yeah, it's...
It does have to be at your location, though, so it's a little bit tricky to coordinate if you're grabbing it for someone else.
Yeah, that's...
If you're not just using it to soak your own up.
That's true. Now I'm wondering, too, like, is there a mystic who wouldn't care about will or intellect? Like, I'm imagining a standalone, like, 4-player game, and you just leverage the hell out of Ikiak and just, like, because everyone has, like, rocking 3 or 4 basic weaknesses in their deck because it's standalone. And you just basically have one player who's just absorbing all the weaknesses.
Ooh,
and they don't care about...
Speaking my language.
But I'm trying to think who would the mystic...
How about Diana? Like, Diana can lean blue really easily. She can use her normal stats. Diana would be a good choice. Maybe Jim?
Maybe, yeah.
But yeah, I never thought about it in standalone. Just be like, all right, everyone gets their XP for free, essentially.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I need to try that out one day.
Yep. Well, that's now on my to-do list for one of our 4-player streams. Everyone go 45. Everyone go 39 XP.
The Ikiak sponge deck.
All right. Why don't you move us on to play us a tune?
Flute of the Outer Gods is a level 4 mystic asset with a cost of X. Lots of traits here. Item, instrument, relic, cursed. Has a will, a combat, and an agility icon. Wow, you just get a little bit of everything with this card. Exceptional, seal up to X curse tokens. Action, exhaust Flute of the Outer Gods and release 1 curse token sealed on it. Choose a non-elite enemy at your location. Either move the chosen enemy to a connecting location or deal its damage to any enemy at its location. This action does not provoke attacks of opportunity. Okay, so we're talking about 8 XP because it's exceptional. You can choose how much... Oh, wow, the cost is X depending on...
So I have played this a bit. I didn't initially plan to put it in there. It's not even on the deck list that I published, but I ended up taking this in my Agnes deck in my Blurst campaign right now. So we've got Daisy pumping curses into the bag and profiting, and then Agnes does this. I've gotten it down in 2 games. It's interesting. I really, really wish that the action was choose a non-elite enemy at yours or a connecting location. If you could use this to kind of like push enemies around and clear a path for yourself, this would be a fantastic card. But the fact that the enemy already has to be at your location, I mean, you can push it out. If you're lucky enough to have an enemy that like deals 2 damage, then that's pretty good to deal its damage to itself or to another enemy. If they're only dealing 1 damage, it feels like you're not getting a good deal. I don't know. Maybe the math is still solid there, but it never feels good.
Yeah.
I would say, big benefit is you're taking curses out of the bag, assuming that's a benefit. I would say you're going to see like 3 to 4 on here. I would have a hard time seeing a game where you're going to use more than 3 to 4 charges on this.
Yeah, it's an interesting point about the amount of damage, because I always love effects in card games that are making an enemy deal damage to itself or to another enemy. But it costs an action, so let's say most enemies, I think that's fair to say most enemies deal 1 damage. There are some that do 2. But in general, you're talking about 1. So you're essentially spending an action to do an auto 1 damage, which is okay. You also have the option to move it, which is also potentially useful.
Also, it locks out, the non-elite clause. I get it. You have to protect important enemies. You can't let the players cheese important enemies. But at the same time, like so many of these effects were, it's a cool effect. It's splashy. You want to like use it at the important moment, and the important moments are almost always with elite enemies. So it's just a bit of a bummer there.
Just that 8 XP for 1 exceptional card is just rough. Like those exceptional cards really, really, really gotta be strong to compensate.
It's gotta pack a punch, and I feel like this one maybe got a little overbalanced. Again. Like, if you could choose a non-elite enemy at a connecting location, suddenly you got a stew going, baby.
Yeah.
But I think my 8 XP, at least in my campaign, would have been better used elsewhere.
If it was like...
But it's cool. I mean, I like the design of it.
If it was like a free trigger and exhaust instead of an action, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, I love the theme of it. Like, who doesn't want to play their little flute of the outer gods and make enemies hit themselves? But, yeah.
If we get to a place where there are enough traps, like cards you put on locations, and when an enemy enters it, something cool happens. If we hit a critical mass of that, it might be cool to, like, pair taking this card with an investigator who's running a bunch of those traps. I don't know. Maybe the critical mass already exists, but I don't know. This just has Scott is fond of saying recently that the juice is not quite worth the squeeze.
Yes, accurate. I do want to run a
because it's a hefty squeeze.
I do want to run a Jim 1-man band deck now that has the flute and his horn, trumpet, and
doot magic flute, baby. All right. Well, let's move from a card that maybe is a little underwhelming to one that apparently broke the game, according to the last FAQ. So we have shirt card, also called a watchful piece if you're really hoity-toity. Yeah. It's a survivor, level 3 survivor event. It costs 1. It has 2 willpower icons. As an additional cost to play shirt card, search the chaos bag and or cards in play for a total of 5 blessed tokens and return them to the token pool. Fast. When the draw encounter card step of the Mythos phase would begin, skip this step of the Mythos phase. So the latest taboo has added, then remove a watchful piece from the game. So you can't recur it, because that's a problem.
Yep. RFG, removed from game. Yeah, I mean, I think as soon as everyone saw this card, there's kind of that feeling of like, uh-oh, like, Survivor is a really, really strong, the strongest kind of recursion class Even something as simple as resourceful, but there's some other options to just grab it back. I think the biggest thing, obviously, is getting enough bless tokens in the bag to do it, but I know
which Survivor's pretty okay at as well.
Yeah, and I know the people who were finding the kind of outer limits of this card were finding it easy to use some Survivor cards to abuse that. So leaving all the abuse for the side, though, because, you know, it's been changed now. It's removed from the game. What do we think about it as just kind of a essentially one-time effect and it gets removed from the game? I mean, I still think it's very strong.
Oh, it's... dude, okay. So, you know the golden pocket watch that we pay 8 XP for to essentially do the same thing once per game? Like, I know you're still getting the Doom, which is going to be the big difference, like as opposed to skipping the Mythos phase with the pocket watch. You're still getting the Doom here with Watchful Peace, but the Doom, as we've talked about with Ancient Evils, is often not nearly as important to your progress as how much the encounter cards you draw are about to fuck you up. So I feel like skipping that piece is still immensely powerful. I would say even with this taboo, this is still a very, very good card. Really good card.
Oh, yeah. Obviously, you're going to you need some way to get blesses in the bag or in a multiplayer group with blesses. But as long as you have that, it's hard to argue for a case of not including it. Like, the encounter cards are just the way of the scenario hitting back, and if you take that away even for a turn or 2 turns, if you have 2 copies, that can be huge. And like in a 4-player game where you're saying you're skipping 4 encounter cards and no one has to face one for a turn, it's just a huge difference.
I very, very regularly pay 4 XP and pay resources and take horror to cancel 1 treachery for someone.
Yeah.
Like, that is a thing I regularly do. Getting 5 blesses in the bag is not hard. If this were, like, remove 10 from the bag, then, you know, it might be a little bit more of an ask. But removing 5 blesses from the bag, and not even from the bag, like, if fucking Mary's, like, camped on him with Rite of Sanctification, you can pull him off her asset, and still this card works. Like, this card is very, very, very good, even post-taboo.
Yep. Yeah, just super strong card.
I don't know what else there is to say.
No, not really.
We're going to have to dig deep.
Okay, I'll do the boring one now. Dig deep is a...
This really was like the let's just play cleanup on cards that are missing Mythos pack.
Yeah, pretty much. Level 4, similar to the other ones, costs 2 talent traits, uses 2 resources, replenish these resources at the start of each round. Free trigger, spend 1 resource from your resource pool or from Dig Deep. You get +1 will or +1 agility for the skill test. I mean, pretty much the same as we said about the other ones. I think will and agility could potentially be useful. Like we talked about my recent Windy deck. Obviously a lot of use for agility, and you're always going to need to pass will tests on treachery, so being able to bump that as well might be useful.
It's a solid defense card. And just confirming, this does work with Yaddle, right? Sorry, I'm just trying to bring back a meme. I know it does.
Okay. I think there are some of the other talents that are probably better than this one, but it's fine.
Yeah, I think the 2 that we got already are probably the best ones, which is probably why we got them in the starter packs. So Arcane Knowledge and Physical Training are both very good cards. Because giving you that willpower option, I think, is super important. And then whatever the other stat is, as long as you can use it, good cards. Lovely. All right, so next card is going to be Favor of the Moon. So Favor of the Moon is a level 1 neutral asset. It costs 1. It is packed and cursed traded. It has intellect and a combat icon. Fast. Seal up to 3 curses. If there are no tokens sealed on Favor of the Moon, discard it. Reaction: when you would reveal a chaos token from the chaos bag, and this is not just for a skill test. Exhaust Favor of the Moon, resolve a token sealed here instead, as if it were just revealed from the Chaos Bag, then gain 1 resource.
I mean, yeah.
So we're going to say a lot of the same things between the Favor of the Sun and Favor of the Moon. They do play differently, I think. But the main thing is that one of the main complaints, I think, or main worries that a person might have if they lean into Bless or Curse play is to look at their cards and be like, okay, so many of these cards rely on the odds that I will draw these tokens in the bag. And like we were talking about earlier, we think empirically, but we live anecdotally. And there can just be some very, very frustrating games where even if I'm playing Olive, I'm like, where are the tokens that I want? I paid for them. They're in the bag. I want them. Favor of the Moon and Favor of the Sun just completely, well, not completely, but they very, very much mitigate that particular risk and allow you to summon a token on command and make it so much easier to build around the idea that you're going to see them as a result.
Yeah, for sure. And Favor of the Moon, like, it obviously is an enabler of all this curse play. Normally you'd be like, why would I want to reveal a curse token? But yeah, so many of the cursed effects just depend on like the curse suite of spells, paradoxical covenant, just a lot of these abilities, they trigger off of revealing a curse. So being able to choose exactly the moment that happens. And it asks so little of you. 1 cost, 1 XP. It's fast, so it doesn't even ask you to spend an action. I mean, if you're playing curse token, this is a curse play rather. This is just an auto include. Like, there's no way around it.
Yeah. The downside to both of the favors, and I don't know how many people have noticed this. It took me a while, which is why I bring it up. But they're both unique. They are both unique. So only one player at the table can be playing either Favor of the Moon or Favor of the Sun, which I suppose is good. It could probably get a little nuts if everyone could bring 2 copies, and then we're all holding all of the tokens in thrall and using them as we see fit. There are a ton of combos with this, I'm sure, because again, it just gets back down to the idea of, okay, all these curse things. Well, here's a curse on command. But one of my favorite ones is, I mentioned it last time, if you're playing an investigator who's got this, and they've got Blasphemous Covenant, the Seeker one, right? Seeker's Blasphemous? Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the Blasphemous.
And you've got a copy of Fae in your hand. Suddenly it goes from, okay, I'm drawing a curse that's -2, but I get a resource, to, okay, drawing a curse. Now it's a +3 between the boost from the Covenant and the boost from Fae. So instead of a -2, it is now a +3. And I also get a resource. You know, the token goes back to the bag, but chances are you don't care because you'll be able to do something stupid with it later. Like, it's so good.
Yeah, it's so good. I think the up to 3 number is good. I think if it was higher than that, it might get even crazier. The fact that it's neutral and 1 XP helps guard against some of the recursion stuff that might help otherwise, because there's not really a way to recur this, is there? Unless I'm not thinking of something.
Just Yorick.
Sure, yeah, Yorick could do it. That's why he's the sun and
Yorick
moon warrior.
And Yorick and Quantum Flux are my best options.
Yeah, so I think in those ways it's nicely limited, but yeah.
And, you know, it's fast, which is great. And then, again, Favor of the Moon, you're getting a resource for your trouble. So on top of any other benefit you're getting, this thing is also dripping you economy. Which is really nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Fantastic card.
Yeah.
So moving us on then, we can say a lot of the same things about Favor of the Sun.
Yeah. Was this my turn to read? I lost track.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Favor of the Sun. This is a neutral asset, level 1. Cost 2, Pact and Bless traits. Test icons, we got a Will and Agility. Fast, seal up to 3 blesses. If there are no tokens sealed on Favor of the Sun, discard it. Reaction, when you would reveal a Chaos token from the Chaos bag, exhaust Favor of the Sun. Resolve a token sealed here instead, as if it were just revealed from the Chaos bag. I've used this one a lot more because I think you're kind of the resident curse guy of the podcast, and I'm kind of the resident bless guy. Like, I've played a ton of bless. And yeah, I just can't say enough good things about Favor of the Sun. It was already a pretty fun playstyle, the Blessed play, but once you add in Favor of the Sun, just getting that reliability, it's just ridiculous. And either you're using it to, power something that relies on a Bless being revealed. Let's say it's your Ward of Radiance. Is that what it's called? Or Blessed Blade, something like that. But there are also cases when it's just like, I need to take this treachery test and I really could use a Bless token here. And so let me get a +2. I mean, and maybe have a Covenant in play that can just make sure that that's all you got to worry about.
Ancient Covenant with this card is stupid. It's really good. It's essentially an auto success.
Yep.
Once a turn for 3 turns.
So for those who don't remember, Ancient Covenant, it's basically don't need to reveal another token. It's just, you just succeed. So if you're playing, again, similar to what we said about Favor of the Moon, if you're playing Bless play, like auto include Favor of the Sun. If you're not including it, what are you doing with your life?
All right, let's finish this clutch out with like 3 neutral cards in a pack. How often does that happen? So looking at our other council card, that's what I'm thinking of, from Arkham Knights. Again, I want to say 2018, but it might be 2019. And we have a large version of this art still to give away once we can start seeing people in person. I keep forgetting about it. Anyway, it's Purifying Corruption, which is a level 4 neutral asset. It costs 4. It has 1 wild icon. It is Ritual, Blessed, and Cursed traded. In reaction, when you draw a non-weakness treachery, take 1 damage and 1 horror. Cancel that card's revelation effect and place a resource on this card as corruption. If this card has 3 or more corruption, remove it from the game. Free action, draw the top card of the encounter deck. Either heal 1 damage and 1 horror, or remove 1 corruption from this card. So an interesting little... I mean, this is almost similar to Spirit of Humanity, where it's kind of like this weird little pendulum that you can rock back and forth depending on what you're trying to get out of it. The interesting thing is I feel like the value here is being able to kind of cherry pick which cards you want to see from the encounter deck. If you're playing an investigator where like you're going to just pass all the willpower tests, or you're just going to pass all of the agility tests, but you're probably going to fail the other, this gets a lot better because you can just kind of be like, oh, that's willpower. Nope. Catch you next time. Calvin likes it because it's a power-up.
Yep. Or potentially healing if needed.
Yeah, I really think that if this goes anywhere, it's going to maybe go Gloria. Like if you're going like hard scrying Gloria.
Sure.
To cancel a treachery that you don't like. And then, draw the top card of the encounter deck when you know it's just an easy willpower test. Get that damage and health back. Or get that sanity and health back. I don't know. It's interesting. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I still haven't played it, although it's often interested me. Similar problem to Ikiak, where I just would forget it exists, but I think now I want to. I mean, I think even if you don't do the little pendulum swing, and let's just say you take it as, okay, I'm going to cancel 3 treacheries and take 1 damage and 1 horror each time, and then this will be gone. I still think that's probably worth it. Like, you're talking about 3 ward of protections worth essentially canceling 3 times. That can be pretty powerful. Now, it is when you draw, which is one of the limiting factors here. But when you have cards, like, I think the treacheries that are really worth canceling sometimes aren't even like, test will or something bad happens. It's the ones that just do something and you have no choice. Deep One Assault is the main one I was thinking of. Some of the other cards that like draw an enemy out or make hunters move, like being able to just nope out of those can be game saving sometimes. So
you sound very much like an evader right now.
Yes, I really do. I think that's bleeding through. And the fact this is neutral, mystics are probably like, we have other ways to cancel things, but for some of the other classes, this might be a good option.
I do feel like it's expensive, both from a resource and an XP perspective.
Yep.
So much so that it would not surprise me that if like no one ever gets around to trying this card, because It's a little marginal. The card itself has some downsides, and then slap on top of that, it's costing you 4 XP and 4 resources to get out. Like, ugh.
Mm-hmm.
It's a barrier. Its effect is cool. I like the design. I love this duality of like blessed and cursed on the cards that have it. I think that's a really cool thing. But since there's already downside in the card, just back off the cost a little bit. Just back it up.
Yeah, I could definitely see using it, but I also do see it's expensive and finding time to play it out. I kind of wish, like I mentioned, that it was one of those effects where it's like an investigator at your location draws it. Because I feel like in 3 or 4 players, when you could really find time to play this thing out.
Yeah, and I love the idea of soaking the damage to keep other people's game a little bit, less less crazy, and then healing it off yourself, and almost just being like a treachery tank. But alas,
yeah, I suppose you could play a card that's like lets you grab the treachery instead, and then wait, how does that work?
Let me handle this into Purifying Corruption. It says as if you had drawn it. So
as if you had drawn it. That's right. Yeah. So I guess technically you could do that, but that's
interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, fun clutch of player cards, but let's get to the scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So, spoiler alert: we're diving deep on the Lair of Dagon, as you might have guessed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so from a story perspective, I'm still trying to keep everything straight. Someone had a nice little like flow chart that I saw floating around. But this is the last scenario that is a flashback scenario. So this is essentially the last thing you did before Pit of Despair.
Right.
Is that accurate to say?
Yep.
So you're entering the lair of the Esoteric Order of Dagon with or without Agent Dawson, right? Depending on what happened earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe
just
that's
always
the case.
happen. You might just always happen. But anyway, so the setup is pretty interesting. You start up with just kind of the initial Order headquarters map. It's almost a little bit like the Greater Good Redux.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of these initial kind of like small building maps. What was the one in Dream Eaters, the Haunted Mansion, where it was like the 3 floors kind of?
Oh yeah, the Unnameable.
Yeah.
Or the 1,000 Shapes of Horror.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's an interesting little setup, and I suppose it's an apt comparison to talk about the Greater Good, because the Greater Good is the first scenario to give us keys, right? So kind of the main mechanics and setup for this one is you've got curse tokens that get added to the bag initially, depending on how many memories you've recovered. Obviously, more memories is going to give you more curses, which is a cool leveling effect.
Yeah, this one has a few kind of catch-up mechanics built into the setup. So there's that. Like if you only got 4 or fewer memories, you start with blessed tokens actually. And then also there's some variation in agendas based on the memories you got. And usually if you got the kind of triggering memory, then the agenda you get is a little bit harder. So this is one of those scenarios where it's trying to help you out a little bit if you haven't been doing so well.
Which I appreciate.
No sense piling on players if you're just having a terrible campaign.
Yeah. So I suppose one of the other main mechanics is we obviously have keys, as we have up to this point, but we're getting and spending keys in a very deliberate way, which I thought was interesting. So we've got I suppose let's back up to maybe like a little bit more of the structure. I think this one kind of has 3 very distinct sections that are denoted by the 3 acts, and each act is denoted by a different oath of the order. So you've got Oath 1, which is going to be that first section where you're just bopping around the actual headquarters of the order. Oath 2, you're actually in the caves again, those flooded tunnels, or shoot, what's that actual encounter set called?
Tidal tunnels, I think.
Yeah, tidal tunnels. Yep. So those ones that we've come to know and love, and
yes,
possibly
our best
bemoan
friends
slightly.
in the cycle. Yep.
And then, of course, the last oath is don't wake Dagon.
Yep. Yep. Accurate. That would be funny if the game just turned into a game of Don't Wake Dagon.
People, you remember those commercials for Don't Wake Daddy, right? Like we're on the same wavelength. Okay.
Yep.
Make sure I'm throwing out
a game I never
no one else is gonna catch.
A game I never actually owned, but saw the commercials for 1,000 times.
Okay, and Psychopath said he made the same joke to his wife. Okay, good. We're on the same wavelength. Yeah. So I mean, this the scenario has a lot of things going on. If you think about some of the scenarios where it's like, okay, this is its shtick, this is its thing that it does. This one, you've got the 3 different acts. You've got constant effects that are trying to load the curses back into the bag. You've got the idol, which you can go grab. That helps out. Starts out still kind of a little bit rough where you have to pay curses to use its effect. But if you bother to spend a key to, I don't know, I guess clean the gunk off of it. Maybe it was gross before and like handling it was kind of disgusting. If you clean all the moss off of the idol, then all of a sudden you don't have to pay that cost anymore, which is pretty cool. You find yourself using the idol pretty regularly? It seems super high value for a single key.
Yeah, I think I've used it, at least once in every playthrough, and in some used it a lot more than that, and it was pretty pivotal. I think one of the things this scenario does with the idol and some of the other key spending mechanics is it kind of tempts you to spend your time doing this stuff.
That's true.
And it can actually get very tight at the end because you are going through this kind of 3-act structure and you have a lot to do. And I think most of my plays have come down very tight at the end, and it is because it's kind of asking you a lot to do in the early game, and you can kind of decide. So you have to make this tough decision of like, how many actions do I spend now, like flipping the idol and doing this other stuff, in order to hopefully make your game easier in the second half. But on the other hand, you are spending valuable time, so there's a trade-off there.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm kind of okay with it because unlike Where the Gods Dwell, which is another one where I feel like the game crunches you, this one you don't have to go get the idol. Like, you decided to spend your time doing that, and in retrospect, in future plays, you can decide like, okay, you know what, I can crush through this without bothering with the idol, and that's going to speed me up. At least there's a little bit of space there. I'm looking at you, Where the Gods Dwell.
Yeah, it's a tight clock, but it's definitely doable. And again, you can kind of adjust how you approach it. This is one I kind of almost want to, like when planning out Iron Man, want to think about, okay, what's the doom point at which we need to like stop faffing about in the order and get to the depths. Like kind of pace out the scenario a little bit and figure out like what kind of pace you need to set in the different parts of it.
Yeah. And I feel like since so many of the spending key action or abilities actually require an action, that it's actually going to be less tight in 4-player.
Very true.
Both because you can split up and attack multiple fronts at once, and because it's just going to spread that burden out among more people.
Yeah. And this scenario and the next scenario, which we'll talk about on a future episode, obviously, are ones where thinking about who's going to like get the keys to can be important, because since you are spending action, like who are going to spend those action to spend the keys and those kind of things. So just splitting up those responsibilities becomes important.
I can see you playing like a highly mobile key runner Monterey Jack.
Yeah, there you go. The key runner. But yeah, there is a lot going on in this scenario, but if there's one thing that I think is always going to stick in my memory that I'm going to think back is like, oh, this is the curse scenario. Because it throws a lot of curses in the bag. And it's the first scenario we've had curse play in player cards, but this is the one that says, okay, the scenario is going to start dumping curses in the bag, which caught me by surprise at first when I first played it, because I didn't, I played it as a face check, not knowing the mechanics as I usually do, and I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, it does definitely take one by surprise the first time, because we've had like 2 location effects up to this point in the campaign that add curses, and pretty much everything else is like the onus is on the player to play around with it. But in this scenario, we have, let's see here, we have a couple treacheries. We've got a deep one enemy that adds curses by engaging.
I think the agenda is advancing. Adds
yeah, like just by pure virtue of setting up, you're adding curses. If you're using the idol without having cleaned it, like you could really, really, really load the bag with curses. And I will be interested to play more campaigns where that's not a good thing for my deck, because the last time I've played it, I'm literally I'm playing curse decks, so it's like, okay, yeah, sure, throw them in, I don't care.
Yeah, it's kind of like playing Calvin at the end of Carcos.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to throw more horror on me? Sure. Yeah, all my plays have not been with curse decks, so I have had that pleasure, I guess you could call it. Yeah, it gets pretty rough if you're not designed to counter curses and you're just drunk. Especially a certain bad stuff token, which should now officially die in a fire, is one of the worst bad stuff tokens for any scenario ever, in my opinion. And that is the Cultist Token in this scenario.
Remind me what it does?
It's, I'm trying to do it from memory, but I believe it's a 0, but you have to reveal another token. And if you've revealed any curse tokens, then it's an auto-fail.
Yep, that's correct. 0, reveal an additional token if you reveal one or more during this test. So if you've already revealed one, if you go curse cultist, you're already done. Oof.
And I think the probability of drawing a curse when you draw a cultist token is probably somewhere around 150%.
Sounds about right.
It has to be every single time I've drawn a cultist token, there's also a curse. It's just ridiculous. I hate it so much. And so I think on future plays I'm gonna do my best not to get cultist tokens in the bag for the campaign, because
yeah, that's silver bullet strategy right there.
It's
good
terrible.
Thinking.
It's so terrible.
So quick aside though, and this kind of leads us in, if you manage to grab the Teachings of the Order earlier in the campaign, I feel like that's a really interesting card, because the campaign later on applies pressure to you in some specific areas, and that card specifically kind of gives you some outs. So maybe this is more a discussion for after Into the Maelstrom, but I thought about it here, so we're talking about it now. When have you generally found yourself using the abilities on the Teachings?
Okay, so if I'm remembering right, you can just straight up defeat an enemy. Unflood a location.
Yep.
And what's the last one?
Remove all curses from the bag.
Okay.
Which is why I bring it up here.
Yeah. So the latter one, definitely saving for this scenario. The flooding one I often use for the scenario before this one, the light in the fog.
For the moon room.
Yeah, because to do the moon room, and there's so much going on with flooding. And then the enemy one just kind of depends on
when the bull shows up.
yeah, exactly.
Because that's definitely the intended target, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, for sure. And it's one of those ones, too, where it's like, okay, do I save it for later? But then you might never end up using it. That one I just kind of use when I'm like, okay, I'm in a really tough situation. Maybe I can get my way out of this, but I'd rather just make sure it's taken care of.
So, yeah, I'm in about the same boat as you. I think I have pretty consistently used the defeat an enemy one during Devil Reef, just because... if you're trying to get all of the artifacts in that, the clock is really tight. So just being able to just be like, nah, to an enemy in that scenario has been pretty good. My first campaign through with Justin, the first time the curse bag filled up to max, first time the chaos bag filled up to max with curses in this scenario, we popped the curses one. And that was good because I feel like, okay, well, it's filling. Okay, empty it, and now the encounter deck has to fight back to actually get that board position back on you. And yeah, the flooding one is interesting. I too, in two campaigns out of my 4 that have gone through Innsmouth, in 2 of them I've used it on the Moon Room. As we're about to talk about, when we get to Don't Wake Dagon. One of the toughest things about that piece is that his chamber starts fully flooded. Yes. I feel like that's the actual target for it. The Moon Room's great. It's great pressure if you can't get to the pump, to take the pressure off you that way. But I feel like this is where it goes because you're either tanking a bunch of damage because you're drowning, or you're going in and out of the room, which is a problem because every time you enter Dagon's room, you have to test your lowest stat, and if you fail, you're putting a resource on Dagon. So I feel like this is maybe the high value target for it, to just make sure that we don't wake Dagon.
Yeah, that's very true. And I know there's at least one campaign that's fairly recent that I did use it on this scenario for that reason. Because kind of the finale of this scenario, you have to not only get clues, but then you have to take a test at the lair to put clues on the act, very similar to Devour Below, the end of that. But yeah, the fact that the lair is fully flooded makes it very difficult to... It reminds me of another... older scenario, and
Blood on the Altar.
Yeah, where you have to keep like dodging in and dodging out, and just the amount of actions it takes up is very tricky.
All right, so then what are some notable cards? Anything you'd like to call out?
I think one of the ones for me was Stone Barrier. It's kind of an interesting one because it's an obstacle treachery. It attaches to a location. And then while the barrier is ready, so we actually have a treachery that can be ready or exhausted, which was kind of a cool little mechanic. And you have to test it to exhaust it. And again, in a scenario with a sometimes tight doom clock at the end, can slow you down a lot.
It can be real rough to be stuck in certain rooms.
Yeah, if it hits on the wrong location at the wrong time, it can be really rough.
I think that one's pretty good. It's just kind of a general cultist scenario, so you've got dark cults in there. I think Fulfill the Oaths can be a really rough treachery, depending on who you're playing. So that one you're testing first agility, and then in Act 2, then you also have to hit combat, and then in Act 3, then you also have to hit intellect. Well, maybe this is just me as a Mystic player. I feel pretty targeted by this card. And for each of those that you fail, you take a damage.
Yeah. Generally for the investigators I play, it's not too bad. But yeah, there are some that... just the fact it asks you to do that many tests on a treachery is kind of unusual.
All right, bold but true. And this has been in many scenarios in this campaign, but it's just occurring to me now. But is Syzygy the peril that like makes you pause the most of any peril that we've had so far? I think the longest on Syzygy than on any other peril card that's doing a similar thing.
I think so. I think in general, I often find myself choosing the losing resources is probably, I'd say roughly like 60 to 70% of the time I'm picking that one. But there are times when you just can't afford that because you know that like it's a crucial time and cards need to be played.
Well, and I think I'm very, very specifically talking about like the peril part where you're looking across the board at other people and being like, well, if it were just me deciding for me, it'd be a pretty easy choice.
Sure.
And suddenly, like, I could take the horror, but he can't. But you were gonna play a thing next turn, I know, so you can't take the resources. So like it becomes kind of an agonizing decision, I think.
Yeah, and you can just put one Doom on the agenda, but depending on the scenario, like Lair of Dagon, that might be a bad choice.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about it. This could just be Ancient Evils.
Mm-hmm.
But depending on your scenario and your situation, that may or may not be a very good or pretty okay thing. Or very bad or pretty okay thing. All right. So then resolutions for this thing, if you manage to get through without waking Dagon. If you do wake Dagon, then he is grumpy and his cap goes flying across the room just like his
kids. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, storyline wise, this one kind of wraps up pretty neatly because either way you have to end up in the same spot, right?
Yeah, they gotta get us back to Pit of Despair.
All roads middle here.
You're probably wondering how I got here.
Flashback.
That's Innsmouth conspiracy in a nutshell. I do like how it has this cool choice of like what you tell Cyrus, like tell him nothing, lie, tell him everything, and that determines a bad stuff token you get. I kind of wish there was a little more meat on that bone, like that somehow there's a little more mechanical implication to, because it is kind of a big decision of like how you handle that, and it really plays out as just a bad stuff token. But story-wise, it's cool. I really have a hard time picking to tell him everything. Like I'm always lying or tell him nothing. But to make sure I explored every option, I have one campaign where I did tell him everything.
So, has anyone gone through the campaign yet and figured out like what each of the tokens kind of mechanically is tied, or sorry, thematically is tied to? Because there are many points in the campaign where you get to either add or remove a bad stuff token, and some of them seem more deliberate than others. I'd just be curious to see if, like, you know, all of the pieces that deal with an Elder Sign token are, you know, Deep One related or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll find out soon and start gathering together the Iron Man spreadsheet.
Tell you what, I will go look myself, and when we wrap up Maelstrom, I will tell you if I found anything notable.
Nice. Sounds good.
Of course, so then after we wrap this scenario up, we're headed into the fourth interlude, Hidden Truths, which is pretty basic. You're just getting another campaign log checked off for a thing for Maelstrom. And then, of course, this is the last scenario that Dawson gets played with. So he goes back to the collection.
Yeah, we'll probably talk about it next time when we... Maybe not next episode, but whenever we cover Maelstrom and wrap up Innsmouth as a whole. But this interlude really exemplifies a lot of Innsmouth, where there are very specific paths you have to take if you want certain things to happen later on, which can be really rough on face check, but will maybe reward future plays. I know, having gone through it a few times now, playing in the future, you do kind of have to really chart things out carefully and hit certain checkpoints, and I think this interlude shows that.
Yeah.
Because
planning for Iron Man is going to be very... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, because each one of these has kind of like 2 triggers that you have to hit, and each is in a different scenario, so...
Yeah. Yep, planning for Iron Man on this one is probably going to be a pretty complicated flowchart. Just going to guess.
Yeah, gonna have to get a big whiteboard from my office and start sketching it out.
Sticky notes and string and newspaper clippings.
Yep. What did you think of this scenario overall?
I'm generally pretty positive on it. I think it sets up an interesting hill to climb. Gives you some cool choices. Depending on your investigator, some of the cards are nastier than others, but I think it's particularly rewarding if you yourself are playing with curse tokens, because it's Skeletor meme. Joke's on you, I'm into that shit. That can be a nice thing. But I think overall the scenario is pretty fun. It's got a good pace. It's got cool sections, and then it kind of pays off with a really dangerous, standoff with a sleeping Ancient One.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
Yeah. I think it's a really strong scenario. I think Innsmouth has definitely been one of the most consistent campaigns.
Agree.
And most of the scenarios have been really strong. It's interesting because we have seen the tidal tunnels a lot. We have seen keys a lot. We have seen flooding a lot. Like these mechanics, they keep coming up and up over and over again. Mm-hmm. Obviously, because they're just part of the cycle, and we got flood and key tokens, so of course they're going to make the most use of those that they can.
Yep.
But I think there's a real danger that can make every scenario feel very samey, and I think they've mostly managed to avoid that. And because like the scenario just before this one was Light in the Fog, where you start in a surface building, you do stuff, then you go down below and do more stuff, and then you escape. And this one kind of has a similar flow. But yet I think it's different enough, and there's enough going on that's unique to this scenario that it doesn't just feel like a repetition.
Yeah, fully agree. All right. Well, I think any final thoughts on Lair, or is that said enough?
I think that's good.
Wonderful. Well, let's wrap this sucker up with a little bit of tentacle time. What's been grabbing you lately, Ian?
Let's see. Well, I've been playing some more Spirit Island, like I mentioned last time. Mm-hmm. Really fun game, deep game. And then the other thing that's been grabbing me, there's probably not a lot of crossover with our audience, but everyone knows that I'm a huge soccer fan, and so there's a couple games. There's like 2 computer games in my life that I had to stop playing because they're too addicting and they were taking over my life. That's my preface. One is Civilization. I used to play Civilization till like 4 a.m. in the morning.
One more turn.
And it's just ridiculous. So it was a game at a certain point in my life where I'm like, okay, I got to stop playing this. The other one is Football Manager, which is a soccer manager game where you're like the manager of a soccer team, and it's like it as in depth as you can imagine, and it's just gotten more detailed year after year, like signing players, scouting players, training them, doing press conferences, all of that. So someone soccer obsessed like me, like I started playing it again recently because I got a new iPad and it's available for that, which it didn't used to be in the past. So I'm like, okay, let me start playing it. And I immediately regret my decision because I've fallen right back down the hole. This is a game I played a ton in my 20s, in my bachelor years, when I would just spend ridiculous amounts of time into it. And now I'm like,
back when you didn't know the actual value of time.
Yeah, and now I'm like, why did I reopen this door? I am having lots of fun playing it because lots have changed in the game since the last time I used to play. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's also a big time suck. So,
oh, that's fun.
I am curious if there are any other Arkham players who also play Football Manager, because I imagine that Venn diagram is very small,
but very passionate.
Yes. What about you?
Well, I chuckled earlier because this is our nerdy card game podcast, and we're both talking about sports at the end. Like I said, I've been outside, I've been doing stuff, but the one thing that I have really sunk into lately is just playing a bunch of tennis outside. So, like, I will play just about any sport. I don't watch many sports, but one sport that I enjoy like a normal person is tennis. And during quarantine last year, my wife is actually the jock between the two of us. So she's just, if she decides she's going to be good at a sport, she just practices and is good at it. So during quarantine, we started playing tennis on the regular. And, she started pretty okay, but is now to the point where we're just playing games against each other and I'm not holding back at all. And it's just good tennis, and we're running around and just being outside and enjoying it. So I've got tennis with my wife and then tennis with the kiddo, who she finally got her first nice racket this year. I think she's going to try to be in the fall musical instead of tennis, but I'm gonna keep fighting that fight. Mm-hmm. We're gonna try. But either way, I'm getting outside and playing a lot of tennis this summer and really digging it. So props to tennis.
I don't think I've ever given tennis a good try. Obviously, soccer is the sport I played the most. Mm-hmm. Used to play American football a little bit. Way back in the day when I was like middle school.
Yep, me too.
Me and my friends played a lot of Mario Tennis in the
past. That's basically the same. We have stars and power shots, and there's like a little signal that shows up on the court.
I mean that's a fun couch game with friends. And I think it remains so until this day.
Yeah, I recently bought the one for Switch. It's actually pretty cool. You can use the Joy-Cons as motion controllers and just like hit the tennis ball, and the motion control works pretty well for just being like a basic Switch game. So, would recommend.
I think I need to pick that one up.
Yeah. All right, perfect. Well, I think then that's going to wrap us up for episode 110. Please feel free to call into the hotline if you have comments, questions, bitches, moans, or gripes, I think is the Scott thing that he says. And if you haven't already, join our Discord. That's where we announce live recordings. We're recording live now to a group of friends, and we do that every time, so we will announce it there. So on behalf of the Mythos Busters, everyone have a great rest of July, and we'll see you for 111. 11D1.
Bye.
Bye.